Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's short briefing, just to give updates as a follow-up to last week. As we have seen over the past 2 weeks, there has been remarkable gains made thus far by the defense forces and the regional forces, these two forces being led at the forefront by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Yesterday, as we all note, the strategic towns of Dese and the industrial town of Kombolcha, among many other towns, have also been reclaimed by the national forces. In addition to many strategic locations that have been taken over by the National Defense Forces over the past 2 weeks, yesterday's feat is a strong blow to the terrorist groups that is currently in disarray. It has to be noted that a week ago, or about a week and a half ago, up to 12 of its senior ranking military personnel were taken out, which has contributed to this grave defeat on the battlefront. The national forces continue to apprehend TPLF fighters in great numbers, with many also heeding the call that had been extended earlier this week to surrender, and therefore heeding the call and surrendering to the defense forces. With a lot of these towns coming under the National Defense Forces, it is inevitable that there would be a lot of destruction. In the aftermath of TPLF's occupation of many towns in the Amhara and Afar regions, it has left behind an overwhelming amount of destruction of public and private property, as well as loss of many lives. I would like to take a few minutes now to show you some images that have been captured following the liberation of these towns by national forces. So these are just a few images that have come in from Mazazo. This is destruction of private hotels and properties. Food that had been stolen and dumped. This was humanitarian assistance food that they siphoned off, but dumped on their exit. In Kasagita in Afar, you see that a lot of public infrastructure has been demolished, turned down into ashes. Also in Debrecina, main point of attacks in this city was on hospitals and public health infrastructure, so a lot of medicines were looted. What they were not able to loot, they destroyed. In Shoarobit and Gashana, private banks were attacked, looted, as well as you can see, hotels have been looted, property destroyed, several banks again. Lalibela Airport, if you recall, they had done a similar act on Aksum Airport as well. So this is the destruction in Lalibela Airport that they have also left behind. Thank you. So these are just initial images that have come in. Obviously, over the next few days, we will see the extent of damages and destruction that have been left behind by TPLF, also as more documentation is on the way. In addition to the destruction of property directly affecting many lives, there is evidence emerging across many towns of grave atrocities and human rights abuses being inflicted by TPLF upon innocent civilians in those towns. In Gashana, in the North Shawa town of Ansokia, we have reports of mass killings that have been undertaken by the TPLF on innocent civilians. Similarly, there are also vast reports of rape that are emerging across these towns that were also occupied by TPLF. Again, while these are initial testimonies that we are sharing and that are surfacing, further investigations are needed to expose these grave human rights violations and also to hold the group accountable. At this point in time, for the federal side, there are investigators on the ground gathering as much evidence as they can. Yet it's also important over here to highlight that the failure of some Western countries and international organizations to look into these massive human rights violations and atrocities committed by the invading TPLF forces in the areas of the Amhara and Afar regional regions makes it clear that there might be some politically motivated and double standard position when it comes to the way that human rights issues are addressed in Ethiopia, particularly by these groups. To move on to humanitarian response update in the northern part of the country, basing it off on the updates that had been provided last week, as per the regional, as per reports that have been received from the National Disaster Risk Management Commission and the Emergency Coordination Committee, the spillover of the Tigray conflict in Amhara region is now estimated to have displaced more than 1.4 million people in the region. This is a notable increase from the figures that I had shared with you last week. Also, following the recent military victories against TPLF forces in Amhara region, the government has allocated over 28,000 metric tons of food for more than 2 million people in 24 waradas of North Wallo, North Shawa, and South Wallo. And also, since the government in these kind of instances is the first respondent during emergency situations, the first 13 trucks loaded with more than 5,000 quintals of different kind of food have been dispatched to Gashana and Lalibela. In Afar, the estimates that we have now is that more than 1.3 million people are in need of immediate emergency response, and more than or close to 400,000 people have been displaced from 17 waradas directly as a result of TPLF's aggression and belligerence in the region. So there are some partners that are engaged in the distribution of around 64,000 quintals of food to conflict-affected people. So around 7,500 emergency shelter and non-food items have been distributed in Gulina and Jafra waradas. Nevertheless, there is still a glaring gap in terms of humanitarian assistance, and particularly humanitarian assistance focus for these two regions, while the continued global outcry is only focused on the Tigray region. In Tigray, we had already shared that in the last briefing that the UNHS have resumed flights between Addis Ababa and Mekelle. Resultantly, to date, 4 return flights have been conducted from Addis to Mekelle and from Mekelle to Addis since the resumption of this service. The latest figure that I have is that a total of 203 trucks have arrived in Tigray with humanitarian supplies, and this has reached Mekelle. Again, some members of the international community that have been raising concerns about lack of humanitarian assistance in the Tigray region are also still quiet on the hold-up of 900 trucks by the TPLF that could be used to transport food and non-food items. And there is growing evidence to suggest that there is a refusal on the other side to return these trucks. Yet TPLF, as we have seen, is still using these trucks to move around its combatants from place to place, and also to transport the looted items from areas it has been routed out from. So yet again, here there is a double standard exhibited in this regard, as well, where the silence to TPLF's vast human rights abuses, the looting of property, the destruction, has been conducted in real time. The silence is quite questionable. Lastly, last week we had also made a call to Ethiopians living in the diaspora. Again, this is an extension of gratitude to Ethiopians in the diaspora that are actively engaged on multiple fronts. The reception by Ethiopians worldwide to the challenge that had been raised last week, which is the Great Ethiopian Homecoming, has been very, very positive. And this is a message to say that particularly your national carrier, Ethiopian Airlines, has announced 30% off on bookings made till December 20. And there's many other service providers that are engaged in ensuring that this Great Ethiopian Homecoming Challenge is done so at a large scale. Similarly, the Ministry of Tourism, which is leading a lot of activities under this challenge, has earlier today made announcements in relation to the call, and this would be made public or reach to the public in due time. So once again, this is to extend the challenge to Ethiopians all around the world and to friends of Ethiopia to come back and show solidarity with vast sections of society and your compatriots that have been at the brunt of these challenges and atrocities committed by TPLF, but also to show the world that what is being lauded or what is being cascaded throughout international media spaces and airwaves is not as it is.